On Christmas Eve, 1971, a 17-year-old girl plummeted 10,000 feet from the sky into the heart of the Amazon rainforest. She was strapped to her seat, alone, as the jungle canopy swallowed her whole. Her name was Juliane Koepcke, and this is her impossible story of survival. Juliane was a bright, adventurous teenager. On December 24, 1971, she boarded Lanza Flight 508 with her mother, the famous biologist Maria Koepcke. They were flying from Lima, Peru to Pucallpa, just a routine holiday trip to visit her father. The flight was unremarkable at first, but as they crossed the towering Andes and descended into the Amazon basin, a massive, violent storm cell cut off their path. The small propeller plane was no match for the fury of the jungle sky. Lightning struck the plane's right wing. In seconds, the aircraft broke apart in midair. The cabin tore open, exposing terrified passengers to the screaming winds and the deafening roar of the storm. Chaos reigned in the sky. As the fuselage disintegrated, Juliane was still strapped into her passenger seat. She didn't fall alone. She was trapped to the seat as it spun uncontrollably, hurtling toward the vast, dark, green abyss below. She spiraled downward for what felt like an eternity. The seat hit the dense rainforest canopy like a cannonball, tearing through thick branches, giant leaves, and tangled vines, which miraculously slowed her fall before she slammed into the muddy jungle floor. She woke up, pinned beneath the seat, disoriented and gasping for breath. Looking up, she saw a gaping hole in the green canopy where she had just fallen. The jungle was eerily silent. She was alone. Her injuries were brutal. A broken collarbone, a deep, open gash on her right arm, one eye swollen completely shut, and a concussion. Her right shoe had been ripped off. She was barefoot, bleeding, and trapped in one of the most lethal environments on Earth. Desperately, she called out for her mother. She limped through the dark, dripping jungle, searching among scattered luggage and twisted metal. She found empty seats, torn clothing, and corpses, but no sign of her mother. She was the sole survivor of 92 passengers. A deep, crushing despair settled over her. But Juliane remembered the lifelong lessons her parents had taught her. A cardinal rule of the Amazon: when you are lost, never leave the river. Follow the water downstream. It will always lead to civilization. She located a small, muddy creek trickling through the thick brush. With no compass, map, or food, she made a terrifying choice. She waded into the murky water, forcing her injured body to walk downstream. It became her only lifeline. The Amazon is an unforgiving crucible. Swarms of biting insects feasted on her wounds. Venomous snakes slithered through the mud near her path. Every step was agony. She picked a small stick to probe the water in front of her, to avoid hidden stingrays and snakes. On her arm, the gash became infested with parasitic maggots. They were eating her flesh. She could feel them crawling. Shaking with disgust and terror, she forced herself to pick them out with her fingers to stop the infection from turning deadly. To survive, she forced herself to eat raw, stringy jungle roots and mushrooms, things she had seen her parents identify as non-toxic. It tasted like dirt and poison, but it gave her the tiniest, vital burst of energy to keep walking. By the 5th day, her body was shutting down.
She sat on a muddy riverbank, looked up at the impenetrable canopy, and felt true hopelessness. The jungle was vast, dark, and completely indifferent to her suffering. She cried alone in the wet, green wilderness. But every morning, sheer survival instinct forced her back into the water. She took her parents' rule seriously. Follow the stream. She refused to let the jungle take her. Step by step, bleeding and limping, she continued her march toward the unknown.
Finally, on the 10th day, she emerged from a bend in the river. She saw a small motorized canoe tied to the bank. Then she spotted a small, ramshackle lumber camp clearing in the distance. Hope surged through her for the first time in a week and a half. She stumbled into the camp, barely able to stand, wearing only the tattered remnants of her blue dress. 3 rugged, sun-baked lumberjacks stared at her in absolute disbelief. A ghost had just walked out of the jungle.
They gave her food, cleaned her wounds, and drove her to the nearest tiny medical clinic. The news of her survival made headlines across the globe. The world was stunned that a 17-year-old girl had spent 10 days alone in the Amazon and somehow made it out alive. But the tragedy of Flight 508 never left her. 92 people lost their lives, including her mother, Maria. The grief was a permanent scar. But Juliane refused to let it break her. She understood that she survived for a reason, and she decided to dedicate her life to the jungle. She went on to study biology, just like her parents. She returned to the Amazon countless times, not as a lost teenager, but as a renowned mammologist, a scientist studying the bats and mammals of the very rainforest that had nearly killed her. Her survival became a celebrated case study in human endurance. But Juliane always humbly pointed back to her parents' teachings. It wasn't luck that saved her. It was education, preparation, and an unyielding refusal to sit down and wait to die. She went on to publish scientific papers, lecture at universities, and write a memoir about her ordeal. She took the worst day of her life and transformed it into a life of purpose and discovery, honoring her mother's legacy in every scientific finding. Today, Juliane Koepcke is still alive, living a quiet life, carrying the weight of her memories. She rarely grants interviews, but when she does, she shares a simple, powerful message. The jungle is harsh, but it is only hostile if you don't know its rules. She fell from the heavens into hell. She broke her bones, bled into the mud, and watched her mother die. But she refused to give up. She followed the river, stared down the snakes, and picked the maggots out of her own flesh. She survived. Her story resonates so deeply because it isn't about extraordinary superhuman strength. It's about a terrified teenage girl who used logic, grit, and a tiny thread of hope to walk out of a place where most people would have simply laid down and died. The Amazon is an ancient, infinite green labyrinth. Most of its secrets remain hidden to this day. But for Juliane, its depths are not a source of fear. They are a part of her soul. She is living proof that the jungle gives life, even when it tries to take it away. It is impossible to imagine the psychological torture of those 10 days. To find the courage to walk, knowing she was the only one left alive. But she did it. And she returned to the very place that tried to kill her, transforming her trauma
into profound understanding.
In 2021, the story of Flight 508 was revisited globally with new documentaries, reminding the world of her incredible feat. But for Juliane, it wasn't about fame. It was about a promise she made to herself while bleeding in the swamp. I will not die here. She proved that the human will to survive is stronger than broken bones, stronger than disease, and stronger than the most hostile environment on Earth. Her story is a timeless testament to the power of the human spirit.
Juliane once said that on her darkest nights, she didn't think about the future. She just thought about the next step, the next 10 yards, the next hour. She took life in tiny, manageable pieces, and slowly, she walked herself back to the living world. Her survival was not a miracle in the religious sense. It was a miracle of biology, logic, and perseverance. She trusted the water. She trusted her parents' voice in her head. And she trusted her own body to carry her, even when it screamed in pain. The pilot of the rescue boat that took her to safety said he had never seen anything like it. She was skeletal, half dead, but her eyes were still burning with a fierce, undying fire. She would not let go of life. Juliane eventually moved to Germany, married, and built a normal life. She doesn't wear her tragedy on her sleeve. She doesn't tell the story to gain sympathy. But in quiet moments, she thinks of her mother's love and the jungle's brutal embrace that shaped her. She is a testament to the fact that the human spirit cannot be measured by muscle or height. It is measured by an invisible internal furnace, the one that tells you to take one more step when every cell in your body is begging you to stop. Her story is shared in survival courses and medical journals worldwide. Doctors study her injuries, and survivalists study her decisions. She is the ultimate case study in keeping a cool head when the world falls apart. But there is one detail that makes her story so profoundly human: the grief. Surviving is often painted as a triumph, but Juliane survived with a heavy, eternal heart. She lost the person who raised her, yet she carried her mother's legacy forward. In 2011, she published her autobiography, When I Fell from the Sky. It was an instant global bestseller. In it, she wrote rawly about the terrifying sounds of the crash, the sickening smell of blood, and the suffocating loneliness of the jungle. She reminded the world that while the jungle is a giant green killing machine, it is also the cradle of immense biodiversity. She went on to discover new species of bats, giving them names in Latin, ensuring the forest that nearly killed her now thrives under her scientific protection. The story of Juliane Koepcke is often described as a miracle, and perhaps it was, but it was also a product of sheer stubborn will. The will to simply get up the next morning, despite the horror of the night before. Today, the twisted wreckage of Lanza Flight 508 still rests in the deep jungle, slowly being reclaimed by moss and roots. But Juliane is not a relic of the past. She is alive, she is healthy, and she continues to be an inspiration to millions. So when you hear stories of human resilience, remember Juliane. She did not have a knife, a map, or a flare. She had an open wound, a broken bone, and an unbreakable belief that water flows toward life. If her story moved you, please smash that like button to support these incredible survival documentaries. And make sure to subscribe, because the human spirit has
has a limitless supply of astonishing true stories to share. Juliane Koepcke survived the impossible. She fell 10,000 feet, fought the deadliest jungle, and refused to die. She is living proof that as long as you keep moving forward, you can survive even the darkest days. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next story.